All right, so today I would like to say a little something, maybe a little bit longer something, about the man I had the honor of calling Dad. And to truly honor him, I will be also giving this little speech in the manner of the one and only Steve Hamline. By that I mean I will call it a speech, as he did for any opening remarks, toast, or any small thing he was asked to say. It was always a full-blown speech. This will have some of the humor that he loved and graced us with. It will be full of probably too many details, maybe a few awkward pauses that we might need today. And it might be a little longer than necessary, as I've warned you a few times now, so get comfortable. I recently had the honor to experience the celebration of life for my friend's mom, where they discussed the P words that God had put on her heart prior to her passing: peace, people, positivity, and others. And maybe because of that experience, as we were going through the week of my dad's passing, there were some words that kept coming up that I noticed all started with L: leadership, loyalty, live, underlined and with an exclamation point, love, and legacy. So those will be my focus today. There are lots of L words up there, but in Steve Hamline fashion, you cannot start with anything other than leadership. Even in his speech at our wedding, Dad spoke of our leadership roles and abilities before our love for each other. Being a leader and growing leaders was very important to him. Dad was known professionally for his unique and special leadership. He was never satisfied with the status quo and was always pushing to go farther, execute better. People who worked with him described him as a passionate, engaging leader, firm, but fair, and also as someone who needed pretty regular IT support. Sometimes to find a letter on the keyboard, as Rose could probably tell you, or just to turn something on. But in any setting, he walked in with command, with everyone in the room usually following his lead. Sometimes, often, without even realizing that he had convinced them to do something. I would also call him a maximizer, since he could see potential in people, places, in buildings or land. He definitely left his mark on the world and the people and the places that he molded to be their best in his lifetime. Dad worked hard and insisted that you always give your best effort, whether you were sweeping the floor or preparing financials for a $100 million project. It was all the exact same to him. You gave 100% effort no matter what the task. If you worked with him, you wanted to succeed. You wanted to make him proud. And Mike and I would say that if you were his kid, you wanted to do the same. Both of our first jobs were really working manual labor on the land that we grew up on, and we absolutely benefited from learning his work ethic. And that's why no one can outwork a Hamline, right, Mike? J.E. Dunn in Denver honored Dad by naming the training center after him for all of these reasons. And that was something he truly felt honored by, and I'm so glad that he got to see that in his lifetime. And because of Dad's leadership qualities and sense of command, I would imagine that the good Lord has probably already had to lovingly tell him, maybe a few times, "Sir, you are not in charge here." Now, like I said, this next L word, live, has to be in all caps, underlined 6 times, and with an exclamation point. Because my dad truly knew how to live and how to get the absolute most out of life. I often teased him for speaking in itinerary, as it seemed a lot of our conversations were outlines of all the plans that he had. He could never talk about something as a maybe one day type of thing. If a place to go or something fun was mentioned, he made a plan to make it happen, and then he executed it with absolute precision. Many of my best life experiences were with my dad. Deepest conversations, fun trips with the whole family, best bottles of wine, most fun late nights talking around a fire pit, best games attended, like the KU versus Texas game where Dick Vitale gave Heinrich and Collison a standing ovation. Dad and I were there. And he talked us into the student section somehow. Not sure how that happened. I saw many a Marcus Allen touchdown jump over the goal line from our season tickets to the Chiefs games. And I loved those dates with my dad. He found the best dive bars and greasy spoon breakfast places. Many of my best meals were enjoyed with him, half of which were made by him. We had long Sunday dinners growing up. He'd cook something just a little fancy with all of us as his sous chefs, also cleaning up his mess. And then we'd linger around the table, talking sometimes for hours. It was a proving ground for boyfriends and girlfriends. And it was also something that was so special to all of us because as busy as we all were, those Sunday dinners were a must. And he made them so special with his preparation and the love that he would put into them. Any ordinary experience was an opportunity to create something fun for my dad. One good example of this was just before Christmas last year. I asked if I could come wrap some presents at their house since we were having Christmas there anyways, and it would just be easier. I quickly got a text back saying no problem, but a couple days later I received a phone call from my dad asking for more details regarding the exact time of my arrival and departure and anything I would need to execute my present wrapping. Dad wanted to make me a special Eggs Benedict with a recipe he got from chatting with the owner of a restaurant in Hawaii. I have a tradition of watching Sleepless in Seattle while I wrap presents, just a random tradition I started in college. And he made sure that he had that ready to stream for me and watched it with me and Mom. He also had his smoker set to the perfect temperature the moment of my arrival because he had heard I was co-hosting a party that I needed to provide pulled pork for that weekend, and my smoker was in storage while we were building our house. Wrapping presents for Christmas of 2022 was a day that I will always remember because he made it so special, and it could have been just so ordinary, just a task to get done, but not with my dad. Mom and Dad would occasionally take our kids for an evening or weekend so Andrew and I could get away. And Dad would often call the week before to get menu requests from our children. And then the day before to give them the whole rundown of what they could expect. And then Andrew and I would be sitting at some fancy restaurant getting pictures of our kids sitting at the heads of my mom and dad's table, eating lamb shanks or linguine and clams, something that looked even better than what we were having. Again, he made everything special. Dad didn't just live fully with family. He was the type of person who met new friends on vacation. He would get cell phone numbers and addresses and make future plans with his new friends. He and my mom traveled quite a bit, and the stories they would come back with were never about just going somewhere and seeing something new. They always wound up with stories about meeting interesting people and having new experiences with new friends. They didn't just eat at restaurants, they met restaurant owners who wound up giving their cell phone numbers and recipes to my dad. One of my favorite examples of this and his ability to just live big is a story from their recent trip to Europe. In Barcelona, my dad made sure to book a cool paella cooking class. And if he was telling you this, he would give you the 5-minute intro about the walk to the class, the building, how the kitchen was laid out, how cool the presenter was and the guy teaching the class. But I will spare you some of those details. It was a semi-private class, so there were other people there. And in classic Steve Hamline style, Dad didn't just attend the class with my mom and go back to their room after it was done. No, he met everyone in that class. He found out where they were from, who they were traveling with, and what they were up to the rest of the evening. He then coordinated everyone in the group after the class to go to a fancy local bar that he had read about being the top 50 in the world. For the young women traveling together, he helped them understand the Spanish menu and helped them order drinks that they would like, even ordering a second drink for one after it wasn't exactly what they expected it to be. And at the end of the night, he paid the check for his new friends, moving the young women to tears that someone they had just met had been so kind to them. But that's what it was like bumping into my dad in the world. He knew how to connect with people and how to make everything better. And up in heaven, I would imagine he has already coordinated a weekly Sunday dinner. Now, it should be no surprise, moving on to loyalty, that many of the same people who were led by my dad or who bumped into him in this world randomly in life, couldn't help but call him a loyal, dear friend. When Mom and I were making calls to let people know that he had passed away, we were both struck by how many men truly wept with us and called Dad their best friend. And that was genuine. He had a lot of best friends because he was a great friend. Dad made a lot of phone calls on birthdays and stood by people in difficult times. He'd tell people he'd wear out the knees in his pajamas praying for them. He had friends he'd known for 50 plus years and friends he'd known for 5 months. And I like what Lori said about a friendship with my dad being a lifetime membership. It's exactly right. You couldn't help but want to be friends with him, want to be around him. And as we were gathering pictures for today, we also commented on how people just seemed to flock around him. We had a really hard time finding a picture of him by himself. My mom was either right up next to him, or he was just surrounded by a big group of people. Some of his best times were definitely with his people around a fire pit, chatting, usually offering up some free advice. He had a gift for hearing people out and encouraging them to bet on themselves and seeing the bigger picture with the ultimate goal of getting people to their full potential, their calling. We teased him about giving so much advice, but in reality, didn't we all love it? Didn't we often need it? Gosh darn it, wasn't he right most of the time? He was. Dad's loyalty to his friends, as great as it was, truly was second to his loyalty to our family. As firm as he was at work, it may be surprising to some that he was not the disciplinarian in our home. Mom had to do most of that because Dad had a hard time getting on to his little friends, as he called Mike and I. He worked hard and often long hours, but he would get home when we were little and get right in the floor to play with us, suit and all. He loved taking us places and doing fun things with us, and he acted like everything we did together was the absolute best thing that he could be doing in that moment. Dad was always in our corner and stuck with us in good times and hard times, and any mistakes were opportunities to be learned from, not shamed for. He made sure we could pursue whatever our passions were, and he did often say that my first horseback riding lesson in kindergarten was probably the worst financial decision of his life. But he always said it with a smile. And as Lori said, we teased him about being the original Geico man, especially when it came to introducing himself to waiters and waitresses. He was famous for giving waiters way more backstory than they ever would have wanted. In his defense, I think this started when I was in my 20s and we would be going to dinner together, just the two of us. He wanted to make sure that all of the staff knew this was a father-daughter date, not a date. He was not that type of guy. But this slowly morphed into telling waiters, tour guides, anyone who was doing anything for our family, all of our names, how we were related, how long everybody had been married, and the latest thing he was excited about for each of the grandkids. To which waiters would often reply, "You have a beautiful family, sir. And what did you want to drink?" He was proud of his family and was not bashful about letting everyone know it. He knew he wanted his family to be a close-knit group of people who enjoyed being with each other, and he made it happen. And we all know how much he loved and enjoyed his time with each of us. Mike, he thought everything that you made with your hands was an absolute treasure. And he loved watching you become a dad and do so well in your career. And Brittany, I see you. Dad got misty one night pretty recently, telling me about how happy he was to see that Mike had found love. It was really, really important to him, and it means so much to me that he saw that in his lifetime. Hannah, Jonah, and Eden, he was loving getting to know you guys, and he loved being your poppy. And baby Delilah, someone will have to tell you one day that he was so happy you were born and told almost every person in this room that he shared a birthday with you. Lori, he loved to open a bottle of wine with you and cook or draw out plans for something in your house. Dad didn't talk about you like you were his little sister. He talked about you like you were one of his favorite friends in all the world. And Andrew, he loved how much you loved me. He knew we were the real deal, and he didn't worry about us at all. He loved the leader you are at work, but he also loved how you figured out how to do everything you do, but also be at almost every single thing for our kids. And Noah and Lydia, you were Poppy's new little friends from the day you were born. He loved cooking for you and could not tell you no for anything ever. And I am sure all of heaven, like many of you, have already seen the video of Noah hitting that championship-winning basketball shot that Poppy was present for and wanted to make sure everyone was aware of. And he loved how well you were doing in school. And Lydia, he loved your personality and your brains too. I actually see so much of him in you, and I think he did too. Not just because you've been inviting strangers over to our house since you were 2 years old, but also because you bring so much joy to any room you enter, and that always worked out really well for him too. And when I get home, I'll have to tell Rusty, Dad's beloved Labradoodle, that he was in fact Dad's favorite child, as much as it pains me to say it. Now, the greatest of these is love. I have saved the biggest and best of my dad's loves for last. The relationship that my dad had with my mom was the greatest example of a loving marriage I have seen in my life, and I would be willing to bet that many in this room agree. May we all be loved in our life the way my dad loved my mom. From the sticky note he gave her that said, "You are the best part of my life," to the way he surprised her after he retired with the super tricked out Airstream she'd always wanted, after interviewing her secretly for an entire year about each and every individual detail that she could possibly be interested in. They were the cute couple holding hands at baseball games and church services. They had been skiing, golfing, traveling, and entertaining together since the beginning of their almost 43-year marriage. They kissed and danced in the kitchen often, and every kid should grow up seeing that. After going through all the family photo albums recently, I can tell you they are kissing in a lot of the pictures. It was obvious to all how much they loved each other and enjoyed being around each other. Mike and I had the absolute blessing to grow up in a home with this example. No matter what was going on in the world, we had the steady rock of our parents' relationship and love to come home to. We were constantly shown how to love and support your spouse, how to be a true partner in life. We want our loves to look like their love, and we'll gladly put in the effort to make sure it's so. Our relationships have benefited from that example, and the legacy of that example will continue to our kids and beyond. Again, Dad knew the type of relationship he wanted, and he made it happen with the love of his life. Mom, everything Dad had in life was far behind what he had with you. You made his life complete, and he loved you so incredibly much. And he absolutely knew how loved he was in return. Now, all of these come together to form my dad's lasting legacy. When he retired, he was given a picture that he loved, with all the buildings in Kansas City, Denver, and beyond that he had a part in bringing into existence. He loved it and loved being able to drive through a city to see his life's work. Many of us know how much he loved it because he loved being able to point out those blue cranes. And often when he was driving, you'd have a hand just thrust right past your face to make sure that you got that crane in your view. You didn't want to miss it. And those buildings are truly part of his legacy, but in reality, his greatest legacy will be the people who God put in his life and he touched in some way. And his legacy goes on through each person that he impacted. Now, my dad wasn't going around beating people over the head with the Bible. We all know that doesn't work that well anyway. But my dad was out there living the big life that he was blessed with fully and loving on each and every person that God had him bump into. And when I think of my dad and what his life has taught me, I think it could be summed up by loving my partner with all of my heart, to try to treat my kids like my little friends their whole lives, and to treat each and every person God has me bump into like a potential new best friend, like the Lord himself would treat that person, and to buy the good steaks, and to take the time and make the effort to learn to cook them to perfection. And in my life, I hope to get half as good at all of that as he was. And I'll end by saying, on behalf of my family, it was an honor to be your wife, your son, your sister. It was an honor to call you Poppy. It was an honor to be your daughter, Dad. And we look forward to being around your table again one day. Thank you.